What's up, Psychedelic investors? My name's James, and you're watching The Psychedelic Investor, your #1 news source for psychedelic stocks. Today, we have some sponsored content from a company called Entheon BioMedical Corp, ticker symbol ENBI on the CSE and ENTBF on the OTC market. Entheon is a company trying to solve addiction through the use of DMT. And this may be sponsored content, but Entheon is a company that I have had my eye on for a while now, due to their focus being on treating mental maladies with DMT. And anyone who has learned anything about DMT knows how interesting this compound is and how much healing potential it may have. And as I've said before, it was actually through learning about DMT on the Joe Rogan podcast that launched my interest into the healing potential of psychedelics in general. Specifically, his podcasts with McKenna were an eye-opener that I can genuinely say changed my life because it led to the creation of this channel. And one of the reasons I agreed to do this sponsored content was because when doing my research into Entheon, I learned that none other than McKenna was on the scientific advisory board of the company, which gave me a boost in confidence. So in this video, we're going to do 4 things. First, we're going to give you a brief rundown of who Entheon is, the investment thesis, and the people behind the company. Second, we're going to take you into the realm of DMT, where we will discuss what DMT even is, people's experiences on the drug, and the scientific literature that is making the potential for using DMT for healing so exciting. Third, we'll discuss Entheon's upcoming clinical trials testing the effectiveness of using DMT to treat addiction. And a reminder that when investing in the psychedelic medicines field, the #1 factor that you should be paying attention to is the company's clinical trials. And finally, I will give you some closing thoughts on the company. If you enjoy this episode and want to keep seeing content like it, invest in the channel with your like and subscribe. Over time, you'll see your investment grow as we continue to bring you the information that you need to know before investing in the psychedelic medicines field. And if you're feeling extra generous, let us know in the comments your opinions on Entheon. Specifically, how do you think it compares to MindMed? Enjoy the episode. So hopping right into it, guys, Entheon is a Canadian company that went public in November of 2020. As stated in the intro, the purpose of this company is to treat mental maladies with psychedelic compounds, starting with DMT to treat addiction. The base thesis for investing in Entheon is therefore based on the belief that DMT is a compound which has the potential to revolutionize mental health care. As we have talked about all the time on this channel, the best investing opportunities come from companies who aim to solve massive societal problems, and one of the biggest problems to be solved is addiction. For example, in 2017 in the United States alone, almost 20 million people suffered from addiction. And unfortunately, that number is only growing, especially with the advent of Corona. And right now, despite the market for treating addiction expected to rise to $31 billion by 2027, unfortunately, our current methods of treating addiction are not working well, and some would say the entire system is broken. Looking at this, it becomes clear that any company that can make a dent in this will not only make the world a better place, but it will also achieve great returns. And in just a moment, we're going to get into what DMT is and why I am so excited for its potential to help alleviate our addiction crisis. But first, we're going to take a moment to look at Entheon, the company. So Entheon, ticker symbol ENBI, is currently a small company with a stock price of 85 cents Canadian and a market cap of $34 million. This means that for those who buy into the company now, there is a massive opportunity if the company is successful. Now, normally I wouldn't bother spending too much time on a company with such a small market cap, but the team of people that Entheon is attracting is really making me start to pay attention. Let's take a brief look at some of the people involved in Entheon. First, their CEO, Timothy Ko, who is an expert in blockchain technologies. Mr. Ko founded Entheon after experiencing firsthand how effective DMT treatments can be for people dealing with addiction and the underlying traumas which are often the cause of addiction. In an interview with Psilocybin Alpha, when asked why he was founding a DMT company, Ko responded, "I use DMT to help me work through some complex trauma issues I was doing a variety of therapies to treat. In spite of the various treatments I was undergoing, 2 times per week visits to a therapist, I was unable to reconcile certain elements of my past and actually found myself in an extended trauma response that caused me to be in a constant fight or flight, as well as depressed. DMT allowed me to access the walled-off portions of my narrative and emotional composition and helped me immensely. And it is important here that people running a DMT company have had experience with the compound in question. Ko has seen for himself the ability for dimethyltryptamine to heal the trauma associated with addiction, as he himself battled substance abuse disorder. Let's take a listen to the founder himself elaborate on his motivations for starting Entheon.
Entheon was formed is in response to the unacceptable rates of death that are happening as a result of substance use disorder. Just with regard to opiates, in any given year in the US, about 70,000 people lose their lives to overdose. And that's just one measure of the impact of drug addiction. Of course, death is the worst outcome that can be achieved through drug addiction, but as was the case with my brother who lost his life to opiate addiction, along that path, which is sometimes decades long, there's untold damage that takes place both to the person and the family as they try unsuccessfully to deal with it. Rates as they apply to alcoholism, every year about 90,000 people die due to alcoholism, and the social impact of that is also unspeakable. Families get torn to pieces, children are affected, and economically the costs associated with addictions in various forms are in the billions, untold billions. And so to take that on, it felt like our responsibility to provide new options for people that were previously untaken care of by some of the currently available treatment options.
So the number one factor I want to highlight here is that Entheon and its founder, Timothy Ko, are on a mission to make the world a better place. They're trying to solve the societal problem that is addiction. In other words, the company's mission is much greater than just trying to earn money. And as I say ad nauseum, the best investment strategy is to invest in the future. Invest in companies that are bringing solutions to the problems we face. So, right off the bat, I am very excited by the philosophical underpinnings of Entheon as expressed by its founder, Timothy Ko. But while Ko piqued my curiosity, what grabbed my attention about the potential for the company is 2 of the individuals that sit on its scientific advisory board. First, we have none other than the legendary Dennis McKenna. And Dennis is, of course, brother to the GOAT of psychedelic research, Terence McKenna. Between the 2 of them, the brothers are perhaps the most influential scientists who have brought the psychedelic medicines back from the fringes and into the mainstream, both in terms of the public discourse and in the scientific debate. Here is a clip of Dennis on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about the DMT drink ayahuasca.
But in fact, ayahuasca is touching, I think, far more lives than, say, well, I can't say about mushrooms because mushrooms are a lot out there, but, you know, the potential, the impact that it's having on society is much greater because people are rediscovering this, and people are, I think, reaching out for anything that will work. You know, as a society, we are spiritually bereft.
Like I said earlier, it was interviews like this that originally piqued my interest into psychedelic medicines, so the fact that he is a scientific advisor makes me sit up and pay attention. And honestly, I wish I could just sit here and talk to you about McKenna for the rest of the video, but unfortunately I have to move on. But again, the fact that Dennis is involved in Entheon in any capacity automatically, in my opinion at least, makes Entheon a company worth keeping an eye on and distinguishes it from the dozens of other small cap companies in the psychedelic medicines field. But the All-Star Scientific Advisory Board doesn't end with McKenna. In fact, he has an equally impressive colleague in Matthew Johnson. For those of you who don't know, while the McKenna brothers were instrumental in bringing psychedelics into the mainstream of scientific debate, it was Johnson who led the charge in widespread scientific studies. After beginning to conduct studies into psychopharmacology in 1996, in the ensuing decades Johnson conducted dozens of studies with psychedelics until, in 2008, he published the Psychedelic Administration Safety Guidelines, which were instrumental in resurrecting psychedelic research in humans. Since then, he has continued his work in psychedelic medicines and he holds many prestigious positions. He is a professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University, which is itself one of the most influential research centers for psychedelic medicines of the last several decades. Here, he has either personally guided or supervised over 700 psychedelic sessions and has worked extensively with addiction. Because of his stellar work, in 2019, he was named the president of the Psychopharmacology and Substance Abuse Division of the American Psychological Association. He is also the president-elect of the International Society for Research on Psychedelics. Let's take a moment to listen to Dr. Johnson on the Lex Friedman podcast.
And what they've been exposed to, but just the fact that one has this sense that they're surrounded by autonomous entities.
Right, intelligent autonomous entities.
Right, and people come back with stories that are just astonishing. Like there's communication between these entities, and often they're telling them things that the person says are self-validating, but it seems like it's impossible. Like it really seems like, and again, this is what people say oftentimes, that it really is like downloading some intelligence from a higher dimension or some whatever metaphor you want to use.
So, between McKenna and Dr. Johnson, Entheon has on its scientific advisory board two of the individuals that are most responsible for the psychedelic medicines renaissance that we are about to enter. And again, I need to make the point that this separates Entheon from the rest of the small cap psychedelic medicines companies. Between Timothy Coe's Making the World a Better Place philosophy and the scientific and psychedelic expertise that they have a phone call away with McKenna and Dr. Johnson, Entheon is a psychedelic medicines company to keep an eye on. So, we can see that Entheon clearly has an all-star team of scientists working with them, but what about the compound that they are testing, DMT? What even is DMT? What does it do, and what evidence is there that this is a chemical compound that can heal mental maladies like addiction? So, to start, DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, is a chemical compound that is found throughout the human body, the animal kingdom, and in plants. In other words, it is a naturally occurring compound that is found throughout life on Earth. And when ingested, DMT can cause an ego dissolution and increases to neuroplasticity, which can be extremely useful in a healing process. And if you take a large enough dose, your consciousness gets transported into another realm where you communicate with autonomous beings that sometimes share wisdom. But that is a topic for another video. Using DMT to heal is not a new concept. For example, there is evidence that it has been used for at least 1,000 years in South America, and throughout the Amazon, different cultural groups still use DMT in the form of ayahuasca in healing ceremonies. So, in reality, if DMT is found to be effective in healing, it will not be a new discovery, but really just a confirmation that the indigenous peoples of the Amazon know what they're talking about, and that they have knowledge that the West should pay attention to. But now that we have started to pay attention, what does our clinical research say? Has there been any evidence supporting the thesis of using DMT as medicine? And here, it is important to note that we are at the very beginning of this research. Though there is lots of anecdotal evidence that DMT can help with addiction, we do not yet have a wide body of literature that proves this. Despite that, the limited information that we do have is very exciting. To start, MAPS, a leader in the psychedelic research field, conducted a study on Aboriginal peoples with substance abuse problems to see if taking DMT through the ayahuasca drink could help alleviate addiction. They found that the DMT drink appears to be associated with statistically significant improvements in several factors related to the problematic substance use among a rural Aboriginal population. It worked particularly well for alcohol, tobacco, and cocaine use, though in this particular study they did not find that it helped with opioid addiction. Another study, this time a qualitative study done for the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs, found that ayahuasca users decreased their alcohol intake. And finally, we have solid evidence through animal trials that DMT can be an effective addiction medicine. So again, we as a society haven't done too much research into DMT, especially as it relates to addiction, but of the evidence we have, it is very exciting. This makes me even more enthusiastic about Entheon, because regardless of its viability as an investment, this is a company that will push the boundaries of our societal knowledge, which is fantastic. So, now that we have a brief overview of who Entheon is and why DMT is so exciting, let's take a moment to dive into Entheon's upcoming clinical trial. And like I said in the beginning, all investors and potential shareholders of any company in the psychedelic medicine space should be focused primarily on a company's clinical trials when deciding if the company is worth your money. So, with that being said, what exactly is Entheon's first clinical trial? The company is set to launch at the end of 2021 a phase 1 trial with the overarching goal of understanding DMT's potential as part of a therapeutic protocol to treat substance use disorders. This trial will take place in the Netherlands with their partner, the Center for Human Drug Research. And since this is a phase 1 trial, it will focus mainly on safety. On top of this trial, Entheon also has recently announced a preclinical study to test toxicity levels on animals, which will take place in Israel. Looking at their most recent press release, we can see that the objective of this study is to determine the acute toxicity of IV doses of DMT in a 14-day in vivo study. And in vivo, just by the way, means in animals. The study is being performed in advance of the company's human studies to evaluate DMT's pharmacotherapeutic profile for the treatment of substance use disorder, anticipated to be conducted in Q4 of 2021. So, the most exciting thing here is the fact that the trial is taking place at all. It will be years before Entheon can actually sell a product, even if everything goes well. But it is the fact that they are doing these tests in the first place, which is so special. So, taking a step back, what are my thoughts on Entheon BioMedical Corp? Well, first off, putting on my citizen of the world hat, the fact that Entheon is attempting to pioneer trailblazing solutions to societal problems makes me very excited, and I hope they are successful. Putting on my investor's hat, I ask myself, is Entheon a good investment? And to answer this, I look at several factors. First is the potential reward. Entheon is a very small company with a market cap of $37 million, and they are trying to disrupt an industry that will soon be worth $31 billion annually. So obviously, if they are successful, there is lots of potential. But of course, we need to understand that there is no guarantee here. The reason that this is such a huge potential right now is because of how early we are in the process. As Entheon progresses through the clinical trial phases, if they are successful, the company will continue to rise in value and attract investment. While this will increase the probability of Entheon succeeding, it will also mean any potential return on investment for new shareholders will decrease. So to summarize, Entheon BioMedical Corp appears to be a company with an amazing mission and a plan to execute it. If they are successful, early investors could do very well. But we are at the beginning of the story. I will definitely be following the company very closely in the future, and I will keep you guys apprised of any updates. Also, keep in mind, guys, this is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. Please do your own due diligence. Please let me know in the comments if you are invested in Entheon and what your opinion on the company is. Do you like it as much as MindMed? Also, don't forget to smash that like button to fight back against the YouTube algorithm. This is James from the Psychedelic Investor, signing out. I'll see you next time.